Hey guys, today we have a special guest over from Zelda Informer, Alex Plant. Welcome on board today, Alex.
Hey, I'm Alex from Zelda Informer, one of the senior editors. I actually got a chance to go to E3 last week and play Skyward Sword, so I hear you guys have some questions for me. I'll try to answer them as best I can, but there's only a limited amount of information that I know, even from the demo, so there might not be some things that I can say.
All right, Alex, thanks for coming on board, and let's just jump right into it. First question, we got a bunch of stuff about the art and the graphics. Do you think the art style does it really improve the quality of gameplay? They said that the art they changed it because they wanted to focus on enemy weak spots. And what are your overall thoughts on the graphics, and do you think they made the right choice?
I'll start with overall thoughts first. The game actually looks really great. You can't really see some of the painterly effects from some of the screenshots because it's just not in motion. You don't get up close and personal enough with some of the models. But on things like environments, you can kind of see what look like little dabs of paint. So that's really cool. And of course, they also have that distance effect that where it really starts to look like a painting from a distance. And that's really cool as well. You can really see that in the sky shots in the clouds in the distance. As for gameplay, um, there weren't too many enemies in the demo that I played where they really showed this off, but the Deku Baba is a really good example because if you look at the model in Twilight Princess, its mouth isn't really all that emphasized, but in the Skyward Sword model, it's a little bit more cartoonish. It's got a bigger bulb, so you can really see which direction the mouth is open, and it's easy to target. Much easier to target than the Twilight Princess model would have been. So it's definitely the right choice. Also, the only other enemy where this was really useful was the Skulltula. Um, it was a lot harder to tell that the bottom of it was its weak spot in Twilight Princess. So
Okay. In addition to the art and graphics, one of the big changes is obviously the Motion Plus controls. Could you just give us a quick rundown? What were your thoughts on the Motion Plus controls in Skyward Sword?
honestly, I don't think I can go back after this. I'm kind of worried about what they're going to do with the Wii U. Are they going to use it again, or are they going to use that new controller? Um, Swordplay was like brilliant, positively brilliant. Really makes a difference in the combat, makes it a lot more engaging. No more of that press B as fast as you can to kill things, which I know everybody said, but it's really true. Um, other items control really well. Slingshot was really fast. Uh, Bow was a little slower, but it worked pretty much like it did in Wii Sports Resort. Pull back on the nunchuck to draw your arrow and release the fire. I didn't play too much with bombs, so I can't really go too in depth on them, but I did use the beetle a lot, and it worked really well. Steering was perfect. I'm gonna get the calibration, I think, in a second, so I can talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, the calibration. There's been some concern of is there legitimate issues with the calibration? Did you have to recalibrate over and over multiple times?
Honestly, you pretty much just calibrate it when you start. At least that was my experience with it. Um, you do that by pointing the pointer at the center of the screen and pressing down on the D-pad, and that'll center the cursor, which helps with pretty much everything else. The only calibration issue I really had was there was one time where I think it wasn't recalibrated between plays, so it kind of started me off kind of bad. But once I recalibrated, it was fine.
And you can
Um,
do that in the middle of gameplay. You can just press
yeah,
OK.
anytime the pointer's active, you can point at the screen, point at the center of the screen, and press down to recalibrate.
OK. One of the other concerns with the Motion Plus controls is that when looking at videos online, there seems to be a bit of a delay from when the player actually moves the Wiimote and when it appears on the screen. Is there really a delay, and is this a problem at all?
I didn't notice a delay when I was first playing on the show floor, which was before a bunch of people were starting to show up. So I'm thinking there may have been some interference between all the remotes being active at once or something like that. Um, there's a tiny bit of delay otherwise, but it didn't really make that much of a difference. The enemies aren't too terribly like super fast, so it's not point important like the exact moment when you swing. But if you get it at the general right timing, you should be okay.
Okay. And about the controls, you mentioned that you don't think we can go back after this. And do you think Is this comparable to, like, I remember when the controls changed dramatically for Phantom Hourglass, they completely changed to a touch control like system. And do you think the changes are they comparable? Is this as big of a change as Phantom Hourglass was for the handhelds?
Honestly, I think it's kind of comparing apples to oranges. Phantom Hourglass is more adapting Zelda for the touchscreen, and this feels more like an Ocarina of Time sort of update where it doesn't really this gameplay is largely adapted from the previous installments, but it's given a whole new dimension with the motion plus. So, whereas Ocarina of Time was it took classic and put it in 3D, now we're taking the classic swordplay and giving it motion plus.
Okay. So, moving on with the controls, one of the control things is, or one of the new gameplay mechanics is the flying mode, the when you're flying on top of your bird. And is it hard to ride the bird? Is it pretty much exactly like the Kargarok from Twilight Princess when you were flying with him?
It's pretty much exactly the same. The controls are pretty much exactly the same. You point it to move it. You don't really have a pointer on screen like you did in Twilight Princess, so you don't quite have that, but it feels almost exactly the same. You press A to boost and dive. The only real difference was I think you can slow down with the B button. I'm not sure if you could do that before because I never had to. And you can wave the Wii remote to flap your wings to go higher, which is actually kind of crucial if you want to catch up to the Golden Bird. It really helps a lot in terms of diving down and getting in the right position. But other than that, it feels exactly the same. It's pretty easy. Just make sure you calibrate your controller right before you go in. Uh, I mean, that's not too hard. You just point at the center of the screen. It'll probably be a lot easier to calibrate at home when you've got your own setup. I don't normally use the sensor bar underneath the TV, and that's how they had it set up at E3. So that might make a big difference. But it was really easy to control.
Okay. Uh, One of the things, there's now a selection of, it seems there's going to be multiple types of shields in this game. We saw a wooden shield, an iron shield, and I guess the Hylian shield. Is there a difference between the shields other than how much they can, I guess, endure?
Um, Yeah, it seems like there is. I didn't really get a chance to showcase it in the demo because the environment was really kind of restricted to the Sky Temple. But the wooden shield will probably obviously burn up in fire. Iron shield will probably be resistant to fire. And then it looks like the Hylian shield is resistant to almost everything except for magic. You can kind of tell this based on the shield meters. The wooden shield has a brown meter, which I think probably suggests that it's wooden, so it'll have the weaknesses of a wooden shield. The iron shield is gray, so probably indicating it has all the weaknesses of iron. It'll shatter eventually, but it's a lot more resistant than the wooden shield. And then the Hylian shield has kind of this blue glowy meter, so I think it's probably weak against magic, but I didn't really get to see any of that in the demo. As for shields in general, it sounds like the whole breakable thing is so there's kind of a drawback to using your shield a lot, and it sounds like a lot of your time will be with rupees will be spent buying new shields, so they'll actually have a use in this game. Especially since shields are really important when fighting enemies like the Stalfos and Girahim.
Okay. All right. So about the enemies, though, you just mentioned the Stalfos and Gear or a boss battle. Uh, in some of the gameplay videos we've seen and some of the analysis from the Nintendo folks, they basically said how every individual enemy is sort of like a mini puzzle. Yet in some of the videos, it sort of seemed like people were just running up and slashing. Is it is the enemy combat is it much different compared to like Twilight Princess and Wind Waker? Are they making too much of this individual puzzle stuff? What do you think?
Honestly, I think it's funny that they're calling them puzzles because they didn't really feel like puzzles to me. If you go back and look at the original Legend of Zelda with the enemies, specifically the Dark Notes, you had to hit them from a different direction already. So it's a lot. I think it's a lot more like that, in that you have to kind of set up your attacks in the proper way, and it's more action based than puzzle based. So I think it's funny that they keep calling them puzzles. Um, a lot of the enemies do take one or two hits, especially the Keese and the Deku Babas and that Hydra enemy that we're calling the Gleeok because of its three heads. But like Bokoblins and uh, the Stalfos are a lot more complicated. You can get lucky and just slash wildly and probably take them down, but honestly, anytime I sort of fell back into old habits of waggling, I just wound up getting blocked. So it doesn't seem like it's gonna be quite as easy as some people are making it look. It's not reliable to just walk up and slash wildly. You really have to pay attention to where they're blocking and hit them from the opposite direction.
Another question on that: does it really matter how hard you swing the sword, really, or is it just a little flick is the same as a hard flick?
A little flick will cause you to slash, but if you want to make sure that you're slashing in a certain direction, you really have to have a defined swishing motion.
Okay. Another one of the new features is the addition of a stamina meter. And can you just give us a basic rundown on how this actually works?
It seems like the stamina meter is reserved for the new dashing mechanic, where you hold down the A button to run, and eventually he'll get too tired and he'll stop for a second to catch his breath. It's also for climbing on vines, so if you're climbing up walls, if you don't do it fast enough, you'll get tired. You can also do a little leap while you're climbing. That'll take up a little bit more of the stamina meter, but it gets you up there a little faster. Um, and I saw what looked like an air meter when I went underwater, but I couldn't dive manually, so I don't know how much they're gonna flesh that out. Maybe we'll see another Zora tunic. I don't know. I'm trying to think of other situations that used it.
Was there a case for the sword where you limit it to the number of like sword slashes you can do in a short amount of time?
Didn't look like it, but I didn't really go around swinging wildly, so I couldn't say.
Okay. One of the things they talked about in the private roundtable discussion was the addition of the Siren World or the Siren Realm. Did any of the Nintendo reps on the floor talk about the Siren World? Is it sort of like the Dark World from A Link to the Past?
It's kind of a best of in terms of the Zelda alternate world. It seems like the whole parallel world and how you enter it through specific portals is like A Link to the Past. You go around collecting Tears of Light, just like in Twilight Princess. You've even got the whole Vessel of Light on the side of the screen, showing how many you've collected. But it also has elements from Spirit Tracks in that there's enemies that walk around this world. You can't defeat them because when you enter it, your Skyward Sword gets left behind. So you kind of have to avoid them, because if you don't, I think they one-hit kill you was what I heard, but I can't confirm that. Um, so it looks like you have to avoid them. But you can, like in Spirit Tracks, use the Tears of Light to kind of hold them at bay. You probably won't be able to take control of them because you don't have Spirit Zelda, but you can at least fight them off with the Tears of Light.
Okay. All right, so there's a little bit of a stealth mechanic to it, it seems.
Yep.
Okay. Um, a few more things here. One of them, the main villain, or at least one of the villains, Girahim, I have trouble pronouncing that.
I think it's Girahim.
Girahim,
At
okay.
least that's what I heard one of the reps.
Sort of sounds like Aghanim.
That's what I thought.
Uh, okay, what are your thoughts on him? Do you think is he really a true villain? Do you think he can live up to the Ganons, the Vadis, some of the previous Zelda villains?
He seems like a combination of Ganon and Vati. He has a little bit more personality than both of them, because Ganon's just typically this like guy who wants to try force and say some menacing things. But this Girahim really seems to have like his own style of evil. Uh, he throws a little tantrum when you first meet him. He's kind of creepy. He sticks out his tongue at you and like teleports behind you at one point. So he is kind of threatening in that way. He's really creepy and really like badass. Sort of teleports his cloak away, warps his sword in, and all that stuff. So I don't know. We haven't seen too much of him outside of that boss demo. So I'll have to see if we get any more footage later on.
It definitely seems like he's certainly going to play a more vital role throughout much of the quest, rather than just the very end. It seems like what we've gotten lately.
And that's good because people seem to have been asking for more face time with the bosses.
Right. All right. We got, let's see, a few more questions. I'm not sure if you can answer some of these, but one of them came from a fan who said, "What Zelda game is more fun to play, Skyward Sword or Twilight Princess?" Or is it too early to say?
Honestly, it's definitely Skyward Sword because it feels a lot like Twilight Princess. It carries over all the good stuff like the finishing blow and the neat graphic style and it adds so much more. It adds Wii Motion Plus. It seems like it's a lot less linear from what I've played so far and what we saw at the E3 demo last year. So probably definitely Skyward Sword. Twilight Princess really wasn't one of my favorites, to be honest. So it's really no contest for me.
Okay, and the most common question we got, I'm pretty sure you can't answer this, but do we have any idea? Do we have a release date for this game?
Well, they said holiday 2011, which pretty much means anytime between Black Friday in the United States, which is right after Thanksgiving, and Christmas. I'm probably at the end of November, I would say, because that's in keeping with previous major release dates like Twilight Princess and Ocarina of Time. But we don't have any kind of exact date or even week at this point.
Okay, well, yeah, so it's releasing this holiday. And Alex, I just want to say thanks for coming on board. And
Thanks for having me.
yeah, and Alex, he wrote full impressions over at Zelda Informer. You can see some of those links below in the description. And maybe we'll do this again sometime.
Sounds good.
All right, guys, until then, I'll see you guys next time.
Peace.